Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our monthly webinar series at the Metaverse Collective for the Anima Collective. I am Shirley Lopez, your host. Our guest speaker today is Lauren Marsicano. I love Lauren. She's a great friend and a fellow Anima Collective member. Lauren will be sharing with us her point of view as an attorney on how we should protect ourselves when it comes to crypto, digital assets, and blockchain. We'll get into a little bit of the basics of that as well. So for those that are new to the Anima Collective, what is the Anima Collective? It is a space where soul development and entrepreneurship meet. It is an inclusive community of self-identifying women with an entrepreneurial spirit, growing together in our true authentic power. We are powerful leaders in our homes and in our communities. We transform the world into a more equitable, joyful, creative, connected, and prosperous place. If you are unfamiliar with the Anima Collective, please go ahead and check out their website at theanimacollective.com. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'll introduce myself a little bit. For those that don't know me, I'm Shirley Lopez, and I have been a member of the Anima Collective since April 2020. I have two legal services companies and a startup that I'm working on. My two companies are called L&L Process and Notary Force. We are nationwide process servers and virtual notaries. And if you have no idea what a process server is, we're the person that knocks on your door and says you got served. So my startup is Metadine. We are a Web3 business, Web3 company. We're creating a loyalty and membership program for businesses using NFTs. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest speaker, Lauren Marsicano. She is the founding partner of Miami-based boutique law firm Marsicano Leyva, PLLC, and has worked with global Fortune 100 companies like Bank of America and Ryder. Outside of her law firm, she is the creator of Networking Maverick, yay, community where she helps her clients turn their networks into net worth. And in 2020, Lauren founded the nonprofit Women for Success that is creating generational impact by empowering self-identifying women through grants, education, mentorship, support, community, and business showers to allow them to define their success on their own terms. Yay, I love that. Lauren has been recognized as top 40 under 40 lawyer in the nation by the American Bar Association. Woo, that is awesome. And has been named a Florida super lawyer and rising star, as well as the best she-owned Miami business owner by the Women's Chamber of Commerce. She received her law degree from the University of Miami and has studied at Oxford University. Lauren has spoken at crypto conference stages alongside celebrities like Akon, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Tiffany Haddish, Damon John, and Marlon Wayans. I know you told me how to pronounce it, and I totally forgot. And has been featured online by Business Insider and Forbes. Wow. Wow, Lauren. Welcome to the Metaverse Collective. Lauren, tell us more about your fabulous business queen. Tell us more about yourself.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've been a proud member ever since this was Las Comadres, going back, I don't know, 5-6 years.
Yep.
And then now and meeting amazing women like you. And we use L&L Process for all of our service needs. So we appreciate them as our process servers, and just happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And it's Tiffany Haddish.
Tiffany Haddish. That's
Tiffany Haddish, the comedian, actress.
That's right. That's right. We had this conversation before.
Ooh, she's great. She's amazing. She has a lot of projects actually in like the cryptocurrency space that she's working on too, which is how I connected with her. So she's amazing.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm going to stop sharing. That way you can share your presentation. So awesome. Lauren, tell us, what are we going to get started with today?
Yes, well, we're going to be, it says it's disabled. Can you enable it for me?
Let me enable. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So essentially, I just prepared a smaller presentation because I don't know what everyone's comfort level is with blockchains, cryptocurrency. So we have an overview, we go into what it is, the history of it, the benefits, the shortcomings, the future, and some of the regulatory landscape that you need to worry about if you're getting involved, especially in the cryptocurrency side of things, which is, I feel like, the more popular side of blockchain, but we'll go into that. So I'm excited.
Awesome.
Is it okay? I want to make sure I can start before I go in. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Excellent. So essentially, we already said who I am. It was a great introduction. Thank you so much, Shirley. You know, the only other thing I will add to that is I've had over 20,000 hours working with businesses and business owners, including Fortune 100 companies. So definitely involved with businesses, the future of it. My husband makes video games and virtual reality experiences. So I've been heavily involved in blockchain and cryptocurrency ever since it started. Or I guess not ever since it started back in the 90s, but ever since it became popular after the Bitcoin launch back in 2009. So today we're going to go a little bit about the blockchain history, what's called distributed ledger technology or DLTs, cryptocurrency benefits, shortcomings, future, and regulations. So what is the blockchain? If you've never seen it represented, this is pretty much how the blockchain works. And I really like this visual representation of it because you've probably heard about cryptocurrency, but that's just a digital asset stored on the blockchain. So you really need to understand what the blockchain is to kind of understand cryptocurrency.
Yeah, and blockchain was my biggest aha moment when I finally understood it. I was like, oh my God, it's a network. I get it now. I get it.
It's these little blocks all connecting, right? So that's these little blocks. It's a digital ledger. So it's distributed database among different computer nodes, and it has cryptography to secure the transaction. These records then are verified and transfer ownership through the blockchain. And so I love how they visually represent the little building blocks of it, because that's essentially the digital ledger that's coming together so that it's always there. So you can always see it. And I think that this is such a great visualization of it. And the blockchain technologies are really at the root of these more advanced databases that we're getting into. And I just want, if you don't know how we got here, this is sort of the history of the blockchain. So this is a nice little visual representation going all the way back to the 90s. Even some people argue you can go back to 70s and 80s for the starting of sort of blockchain technology, but a lot of people think 91 is sort of the initial. So you have Stuart and Scott, and they're the ones that first work on the blockchain, and then they're also the ones that get these little meta trees, these little metadimes and meta trees involved. So they're called Merkle trees. So those get formed, and that's how they form a legal corporation, by using a system developed by Stuart and Scott. And the blockchain became this efficient way to store several documents to be collected in one block. So the Merkle tree is then used to secure these blockchains to create the blockchain technology that we know today, and that really came to develop in around 2004. So if you look, I think a lot of people might know that Bitcoin, the first purchase was in 2010, but the actual white paper was released in 2009 by Satoshi, and I'm going to mispronounce the name, Nakamoto, I believe is how we say it. But this, the initial white paper. What's interesting about him, no one really knows this person. This person releases a white paper. There's a lot of conspiracy theories about this. Is it one person? Is it a collective of people? So it's very, very interesting to dive into. But that's how we get Bitcoin. Bitcoin is when blockchain, I think, really blew into the public sphere, because as a lawyer, I had been learning about blockchain back in law school and how we're using it as digital records. So if you think like a DocuSign or something like that, that's really a digital record. That's a contract, and that's taking IP addresses, putting together the signatures, and sort of like a little mini blockchain, if you will.
Right.
Because you're not going to sell that DocuSign to someone else and have it keeping recorded, but it's a little mini microcosm of a blockchain. So people might have been familiar with it, but Bitcoin really brought this into the stratosphere, especially because we had the huge hikes, people were, Bitcoin millionaires. And then you have these transactions using Bitcoin. Then you have the offshoots of it. So you have the Bitcoin marketplace, but then you have Ethereum. Ethereum really introduces smart contracts. And then you have Ethereum 2.0, you have Ethereum DAO. DAO also had a lot of regulation subjected to it, which is how we get the Howey test. And that we'll talk a little bit about that later. But then we're still using this technology, and now we have decentralized, centralized currencies. We'll go into that a little bit as well. But I love seeing sort of the history of it, because a lot of people think, oh, cryptocurrency is this thing that doesn't exist, and it's so new and no one cares about it. But it's really been developed from blockchain technology, and blockchain technology is not that I would say controversial, right? Because blockchain technology, a lot of government entities like it. We can use it with a lot of different things. So this is what's called the distributed ledger technology. So this is kind of a visualization of what this little block is in the distributed ledger. So I like this version of it as well. And I like all these visualizations because it really helps you think about all these things that sort of feel up in the air, but puts it in a little visual of this block. So the concept of this, if you think about it like a real estate transaction. So in a real estate transaction, we're all familiar with a chain of title. Even if you haven't purchased real estate, you've probably heard about it. You've heard of the chain of title. The blockchain can be applied to almost any asset like real estate, and it's an instantaneous and secure version of that chain of title. So imagine, instead of having to hire a title company to check years and years of records, there's always these little issues. What if you didn't put the actual folio number correctly or the legal description correctly? That gets eliminated because it's all on the blockchain. The chain has that code on it. The chain has that contract, has that information, and it's just changing hands. So it makes the technology improvement as far as these ledgers go, because you're not relying on a single intermediary. These transactions are distributed through a network of servers or nodes. And that's how each node gets a separate copy of the ledger, so we can verify it. It's not just one that can be hit and destroyed. It's an entire chain. So that's why sometimes people refer to blockchain as a DLT, or distributed ledger technology, and we'll refer to it kind of interchangeably. But each node's ledger is complete, it's continuously updated, and it records all these transactions that have been occurring since the genesis or inception of the chain. So immediately, all parties can execute this transaction, work together using these cryptographic algorithms, and validate it. Instead of taking days or weeks or months, this is happening instantaneously. So as a lawyer, that's very exciting. As a lawyer, the implications for that are extremely exciting. And you get all of these details by just examining the blockchain. And so when you compare it to like a ledger, you've seen those old-fashioned ledgers of like counting and ledger.
Yeah.
Think of that, but now it's these little chains on the block.
And let me ask you, you said it's so exciting as a lawyer. Do you say that because it's going to streamline a lot of things? It's going to help reduce fraud? What is your first thought, like as a lawyer, why it's so exciting?
All of those things. I think it's instantaneous validation. So instead of, as a lawyer, sometimes we have to go back and forth. We're checking title, we're checking the company, we're checking history, especially if you do like an asset purchase or an asset sale. There's a lot of fraud, as you can imagine, on chains of title, especially on properties. So that being able to be almost eliminated. So it's nothing's ever going to be eliminated 100%, but the security we could feel of being able to look at a blockchain that's being validated by nodes on all these different nodes, and being able to say, okay, yeah, this is pretty good. And instead of it taking 3 days or a week, the turnover time can be almost instantaneous, especially from a due diligence standpoint. Now, that doesn't mean we're still going to need the company's books and records. We're still going to need forensic accountants. You still need lawyers, because one of the limitations of the blockchain is you can put the digital contract on there, right? Like the terms and conditions you want to put on. A lot of people do it for sales of properties, especially. But to enforce it, you still need lawyers, right? So that if there's ever a dispute, for instance, if someone gets hurt on the property, who's liable, or if it included, what boundaries of the property, what easements are there, how we're enforcing that, those are all going to still require lawyers. But it really takes out a lot of what I would say is kind of like almost the busy work, just validating things. Now we can have the trust, we can come into a contract. You've got the money on that side, instead of having to put it in an escrow and validate that this escrow is there and that you have the funds. We can see your wallet, maybe, right? You can show us your wallet, and we know, okay, you have that amount of money. Perfect. You're gonna transfer that. We'll give you the blockchain. It happens instantaneously, instead of having to be like, we signed, now make the payment, release the escrow takes a few days to validate, then it comes through, blah, blah, blah. So exciting, I think, for clients, and it really is going to cut down a lot of the time.
Wow. Very
At least
interesting.
that's my view of where we're going with it, at least.
Awesome. Awesome. Sorry, I interrupted here.
No, please ask questions as we go. So there are degrees of centralization. So you're going to hear a lot when you get into the space like DeFi or centralized or closed nest or open nest. And these aspects are just continuously evolving within the DLT space for these ledgers. But essentially you have three main types right now. You have the public ledgers, the partially decentralized ledgers, and the private ledgers. They're pretty self-explanatory. But public ledgers, as you can imagine, that's what more or less is the Bitcoin. It's fully decentralized among these nodes. The transactions recorded are pseudonymously, and it's very transparent, and participants are able to transfer the Bitcoin without need for intermediaries or third parties. So that's what we're saying. You don't need to put in an escrow or something. Partially decentralized, a little bit of a mix. You might have a distributed ledger where it has some permission nodes or an approved number of them that might each have like different passwords they need to enter in order to make a transaction happen. And that's just because maybe, especially for law firms, for instance, if there are law firms that started accepting Bitcoin, and we have very, very strict trust accounting. So you might want to have multiple people have to enter a certain part of the chain of the code in order to transfer it. So that's where that comes in. But a lot of it might be able to be seen through the Bitcoin platform, but it's being traded a little bit differently on the back end. And then you have the private ledgers where it's just a single trusted entity controls the changes to the ledger and the user permissions. That's probably the scariest one for some people and the best one for others. Some people love the public ledgers. The technology is very adaptable, which is one of the great parts of it. It can be used for different types of groups, whatever your different end goals are. And one way to really think about these distributed ledgers is that it's widely or narrowly shared. It's cryptographically secured with a database, right? And there are different possible user permissions, and it's continuously and quickly being updated via consensual validation mechanisms. So that's kind of where the rubber bands are kind of being stretched there, but essentially that's what we think of when we think of these different levels of openness or closeness. So what is cryptocurrency then? So we talked about blockchain, we touched a little on cryptocurrency, but essentially it has no intrinsic value, has no physical form, and its supply is determined by the protocols on the chain. So the reason this is more, I would say, controversial is because it covers a wide range of tradable assets. These are like Bitcoin, Ethereum, things you've heard of on that side. Regulators always are on the lookout for money laundering, fraud, consumer protection, and market regulation issues. That's the big reason banks are so highly regulated, although a lot of us don't think they seem to be. The banks seem to not be regulated as harshly when we have these buyouts happen. But they are. The banks actually do have a lot of regulations. There's a lot of red tape. If you've ever gotten some account frozen because they thought you were a foreign corporation or something that was getting money from a place they didn't like, and it gets flagged, you probably had to deal with these regulations. But it's because
stories.
I feel like I've been involved with it. You've probably been involved with it. If you're dealing with any international businesses at all, probably at some point you'll deal with it. So the idea behind cryptocurrency is that hopefully this takes out some of the issues of being able to tell where the money's coming from because it's on a blockchain. However, right now, the way it is, people are actually using it to commit fraud. So it is an issue, right? So that's why you've heard, I would say the most famous example of it is people saying that Russian money is being traded on these platforms through Bitcoin. So you're going into markets that traditionally wouldn't have access to capital through US markets that people are being able to trade online. And because it's on this blockchain, it's supposed to be more secure. It's supposed to be pseudonymously. And US doesn't like that. The US wants to know who's behind all this money being traded, right? And that's important. For consumer protection, really, at the end of the day, is what the justification is really consumer protection, fraud, wire fraud, things like that. So then, if there are all these issues, who regulates it? Who regulates crypto? And unfortunately, that is not a very clear answer because there are so many people with their hands in the pie, right? So these are all, these are all the people that want to get in on regulating it. And it really just depends on the situation. So these securities, cryptocurrencies, mostly, I would say, are securities regulated by the SEC. So the Securities and Exchange Commission, who has authority under the Securities Act of 1933, the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. There's an Investment Advisor Act, an Investment Company Act. There's a lot of regulations, right? So the SEC, let's say, is the big one. That's the big one that a lot of people need to get past first. And the way they do that is something called the Howey test. So this is the touchstone of whether something is considered an investment contract. And if it is an investment contract, it is a security that is then regulated by the SEC. So in Howey, just to give you some background on what it is, it's a 1946 ruling. So it's old. It's old. It's very, very old. Basically when the ENIAC computer was invented, right? So this is a very, very old regulation. And what happened is there was a tract of citrus, and it's Florida, people, citrus groves in Florida. Of course, Florida is involved here because we're the fraud capital of the world. But let's say, so they had these tracts of citrus groves. So these citrus groves were owned by the Howey Company. They would lease land, or they would sell the land to individuals that would buy it, and those individuals would lease it back to Howey to manage it. The company would tend to these groves, they'd hire the employees, they'd sell the fruit, and the parties shared in the revenue. But the purchasers of the land, these tracts of orange groves, didn't really tend to the land, they weren't really involved, but they just made money. And the question was, should Howey have had to register this as a
investment?
Yeah, a security, an investment, right? An investment contract. And the court essentially said, yes. The final ruling established 4 criteria. So these 4 criteria from 1946 are the 4 criteria that the SEC uses today to determine whether something is an investment contract. Is it an investment of money? Number 1. So that's, usually everyone kind of validates that.
Yeah.
Is there a common enterprise? Is there an expectation of profit, which a lot of people expect profit, right? That's why they invest in things. And is it to be derived from the efforts of others? So you're not doing anything. These efforts are all coming from others. So think of when you invest in like the stock market, right? The stock market, you're investing in a company, but more or less you're not really doing a lot with that company.
Yeah.
The company is managing it, doing it. So that's like the easiest way to think about how the SEC gets involved in these investment contracts. But so the Howey, the buyers of the Florida citrus groves, saw these transactions as valuable because they get this land and then they're just going to get revenue from it, and people are going to work it for them. They're going to hire the employees, they're going to work the groves, they're going to sell it, they're going to do the supply chain. All these people got to do is buy the land, and had enough money to buy the land.
Yeah.
So the SEC said, no, you got to register with the SEC, right? So that became the determining factor for all cryptocurrencies as well. So if the cryptocurrency is a commodity, and virtually all right now cryptocurrencies qualify as commodities, and I say virtually because we'll talk about that in a second, but virtually all of them qualify as a commodity, then the Commodities Exchange Act and the Commodities Future Trading Commission, known as the CFTC, come into play, and they have then jurisdiction over the futures or derivatives of these cryptocurrencies. So the CFTC has jurisdiction over the fraud on the spot market trading, for instance, which is something that's being litigated right now as well. In addition, there are at least 2 federal district courts that have read that there's broad jurisdiction giving the CFTC power to police fraud in virtually any crypto trading. So remember, these are cryptocurrencies are supposed to be pseudonymously, but now you also have to prove that there's no fraud. So it's these competing interests that are really battling it out right now. The Department of Justice gets involved, of course, over the federal crimes in cryptocurrencies. That's really money laundering, wire fraud, things like that. The Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which is FinCEN, with the Department of Treasury gets involved, and works with the DOJ in monitoring some of these transactions. And let's not forget the states, because we are a federal society, we are a federal republic, which means the states actually are supposed to have a lot of the power, and only the federal government gets what we give them. So each state has its own laws. So not only do you have to worry about all these federal regulations, all these federal agencies, each state individually is going to have it. So like New York, Washington, Texas, Massachusetts, they're all going to have different ones. Florida has very different ones. So who regulates it? Everyone. It feels like.
And the states, are there certain states that are more lenient or are more friendly to cryptocurrency?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say the ones that aren't heavily into it, so the ones like I would say New York is not friendly, right? So New York like regulates a lot. I feel like Texas has been coming in with a lot of regulations. California is very involved. California tends to be very consumer friendly. A good place, Florida. Florida tends to be pretty good. I would say we have a great, Mayor Francis Suarez down here that was, really involved with bringing Bitcoin and actually paying government employees in Bitcoin. I believe he was one of the first mayors to do that. So, and we have a Florida sandbox law, which is supposed to benefit sort of these emerging, ICOs and crypto technologies. So the sandbox law is essentially let them play like children and we won't make you subject to, there's a lot. So part of these regulations are you have to do a lot of filings, a lot of disclosures, a lot of paperwork, right? And so the sandbox law is supposed to be, you have a limited amount of time to kind of play around with it, where we won't subject you to these expensive, crushing demands, but eventually you will have to be subjected to it. So Florida's pretty good. Yeah, but it's definitely state by state. And so that's why it's also tough, because if you're in a business that's trading currencies between people in other states as well, or you're doing something like buying NFTs from people in other states, what are the NFT regulations in that state? What are in your state? What are
so why does the average person need to know like if an NFT is from another state?
So I guess the average person might not need to know, right, on the person purchasing it, although some of the Florida laws, it wasn't with NFTs, it was for cryptocurrency, where, you had those cryptocurrency ATMs.
Yeah.
And so one of the original big cases in Florida, I think it was back in like 2018, was someone that was dealing in these cryptocurrency ATMs. So you're basically benefiting from like sort of like a triangular arbitrage on money and getting it, and he was keeping it. You keep it in a wallet, your digital wallet. So are you trading things illegally? Is it fraud? What's happening? So I would just say, for the average person, don't get involved, unless you're going to spend a lot of time really diving into this, but just don't get involved in like these meme coins, these decentralized, the DeFi ones. I would say stick to the bigger ones, Bitcoin, Ethereum, things like that. Because if you buy NFTs, so for instance, NFTs are non-fungible tokens. So the difference between an NFT and a cryptocurrency is NFT usually gives you something, right? It's actually usually giving you something that's of value. So like think of like artwork. So like you're getting like a piece of art. So you're getting it on the blockchain and you're paying money for it, but now you own the NFT, the IP, all these intellectual property rights that get involved with it. But where is that NFT from? What regulations is it subject to? Did you actually purchase it on the proper platform? Are you actually purchasing the right NFT? Maybe it's a spoof NFT from another platform, from another blockchain, and they're telling you something different, right? So that's why if you're purchasing, either make sure you're doing the work to really look at these companies, because there's so many different types of marketplaces now that allow you to purchase and trade. So I would just say the average person, just how the average person wouldn't just go invest in the stock market, I would say, without really diving into what you're investing in. They're trying to create things like EFTs for cryptocurrencies. So that might be something where normal people can maybe get involved in the future by investing in these exchange funds. But I would just say, unless you're really going to dive into it, or you really trust whoever you're purchasing it from, that it's very transparent on the blockchain, it's not something to just dive into lightly and be like, oh, yes, I'm going to invest $10,000 on this NFT. What? Don't do that. And I think it's more when I speak at all these, the conferences or these groups, it's more for people that really want to start diving into it more. So I just want them to be more aware of who they're dealing with, how it could become a potential SEC regulation problem, where you don't want to be trading funds, online.
And
Bitcoin.
so where do you want to like do all of this if you don't know, but you want to go to a trusted platform, like what do you recommend?
So, I mean, there's not just one platform, but I would say definitely Bitcoin is probably the first one you want to dive into, right? Like just learning about Bitcoin. Bitcoin, by the way, is the one that the SEC is like, no, that's not a regulated currency, right? So Jay Clayton, who was chair of the SEC in 2018, he said the cryptocurrencies that replace sovereign currencies, that replace a dollar, a euro, a yen, with Bitcoin, that type is not a security. And so you may be thinking, but Lauren, you just told me most cryptocurrencies are securities and are regulated. Yeah. Well, Bitcoin is not, because Bitcoin became so big that countries started using Bitcoin in place of their own currencies. Right. So if a country adopts a cryptocurrency as its country's form of, fiat currency, not fiat currency, but form of currency that replaces it, then it is no longer a security that the SEC worries about. So you just have to become too big not to fail. Essentially is what it feels like based on that, because otherwise, he said also in 2018, that same guy, Jay Clayton, the chief, said, basically every ICO he saw was a security. And so that scared a lot of people. So there's a lot of issues right now, with different ICOs coming out. Ripple is another one we're kind of looking at right now. There's litigation against Ripple and what's going on. But the SEC is just famous for cracking down on these unregistered digital assets. And I also think the conspiracy theory, if you want to know the conspiracy theory behind it, is because the US wants to have its own digital currency, right? So they want to crack down on everyone else's to say, oh yes, if you want to enter the market, unless you're a Bitcoin that's already out there with billions of dollars and is all other currency, we're going to regulate you so much that you might as well just use the US's digital currency, right? So that's kind of the conspiracy theory about why these crackdowns are happening. But on the flip side of that is we do want to protect consumers, right? You do want to protect people, you want to protect consumers. There's litigation over these meme coins where people will post about the meme coin, they'll ride the wave up, and then once it reaches a certain point, they start selling, and it was sort of maybe a fraudulent transaction kind of thing. If you're not timing it right, you get screwed. So I wouldn't start on the meme coin sides for sure. I would start on the Bitcoin side, just dipping your toe into Bitcoin, learning about the transactions, because by doing Bitcoin, then you learn how to use a digital wallet. You learn about what platforms you want to use, like Coinbase, for instance, like a Coinbase that you might want to trade on. Because then once you get into higher level things, you might need a MetaMask, and then you're going to be like, what's a MetaMask? And then you're like, it's a lot. So just dip your toe in first.
Right.
Little by little, learn about it. Just don't go, all in on something right away. And I wouldn't even go all in on Bitcoin, to be honest with you, because, right now Bitcoin's been, having a winter. They say it's a digital crypto winter. But I would say it's a great time to dip your toe in, because the Bitcoin's low right now. It's a great time to start getting involved, learning it, just like you would learning about the stock market, right? You don't just invest $10,000 in cat or something like that. You're gonna research, and you're gonna say, oh, or maybe you're investing in companies that you align with their goals. There are cryptocurrencies like that as well. So there are cryptocurrencies that have goals that are more environmentally friendly, going against the climate catastrophe sort of thing. So maybe you want to get more involved with that. There's like a women's empowerment one. There are different ones that have different alignment that you can look into that might be right for you. But first, try a Bitcoin and getting used to the different platforms, the different wallets, the different trades, the cost of trading. It's not free, right? So,
I learned that the hard way.
Just dipping your toe into that and being involved with things like this. So groups like this and what you're doing at Metadime, I think, are providing people with more access and more information and being able to kind of bridge the gap between the average person and kind of getting involved in it. So I think that that's really great too.
Awesome.
But while we're getting into it, so that's the regulations and the Howey, we went over the Howey test. So this is just some of the quotes. It's not one size fits all is basically the bottom line of all of that, because, oh, all cryptocurrencies are regulated. Nope, not Bitcoin. So then it's like, what? And you just want to keep involved with it. If you're interested in utilizing digital assets as part of like an ICO, an initial coin offering, for your venture, you definitely want to be diligent and hire someone that's going to help you with the process for sure.
Right.
So why does the blockchain matter? There are a lot of benefits. There are a lot of unknowns, but there are a lot of benefits. It's got increased transparency, accurate tracking, a permanent ledger. We've got cost reduction, but it does have complexity, a lot of regulations that we don't know. They're really cracking down. Implementation challenges because it is a high level technology and you do need to know how to use different technologies you probably never used before. And there are a lot of competing platforms. But it matters. Why does it matter? Because we have capital markets, we have trade finance, we have payments, we have real estate. We can identify persons, assets, or documents through medical records, verifications of ownership, right? There are a lot of flexibility that comes with this, a lot of efficiency, and potentially a lot more security, especially on the Web3 side. Right?
Yes.
And protecting your information and not having to sell it. Because, you know, if something's free, you're the product. So, you know, you want to protect.
But also like increased transparency, but also some anonymity too.
Some
Right?
anonymity. Yep. Yeah, transparency, I guess, with increased transparency on what you're buying, the chain of title is what you're buying. So that's more of the transparency, but
Yeah.
you get the benefit of hopefully being maybe a number on the blockchain. So to identify who you are as a number would take a lot more effort
Right.
than, you know, a signed contract where they'd be like, oh, okay, Lauren
Put your name on
Marsicano,
it.
there it is. Right. So it does give you that increased pseudonymously being able to get more involved in trading and things like that, but more transparency on what you're purchasing, the time value of it, really turning over really well. And I don't want to, you know, belabor all the different things that is so amazing about it, but trade processing, record keeping in custody, risk mitigation, smart contracts. For me, smart contracts is what we've been talking about in the law for years and years and years, ever since like I said, back in 2010 when I was in law school and I was learning about it. So I really enjoyed the blockchain for that. You know, I could go into each of these for like 20 minutes a piece, but these are essentially the best benefits. Obviously the risks, the technological issues. So there's a lot of technology. For instance, I forget the guy's name that originally mined Bitcoin back in the day, but you know, Bitcoin, you mine it, it's on your hard drive. He had the hard drive, he lost the hard drive, and there's just $127 million of Bitcoin
That's
value.
right.
That's just, you know,
In a landfill somewhere.
So, you know, that's a technological issue because most people would be like, but what if I just have my login? No, if you're, you know, a lot of people want to really safeguard their cryptocurrencies. So not to get too into it, but you might take it out of a digital wallet and put it onto like a keychain or something that requires, you know, a hard drive. So if you lose that hard drive, you're gone forever. You have no access to it, even though you own it, it's gone. So some people don't like it for that reason, because some people lose their car keys every day. So you don't want to do that. There's also people that forget their passwords. So the passwords are, you know, 20 something numbers or letters and sequences. And if you lose that, it's gone forever. So there's technological issues that a lot of people deal with.
Yeah, they definitely need to find a solution to that, because that is just nuts.
Yeah,
you know,
I would say that's the worst part.
That's the worst part, you said?
I would say I in terms of like normal people getting involved in it.
Yeah.
Like,
it's the worst and the easiest part to make a mistake on.
It's so easy. And, you know, even if you keep a digital wallet on your phone, you could still lose the password forever. If you lose the keychain, you lose it forever.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's one of those things that it's very difficult. And then there's the argument that the blockchain is only as secure as your phone or wallet then. So like if for some reason you put in a note somewhere what that is, and someone gets access to your phone and they get your note and then they have your wallet and then they transfer it to them, you never get it back either.
Yeah.
Right. So it's gone. So, you know, there are these shortcomings, but to me, that all these shortcomings, the government regulations, all of that, they're very minuscule compared to the benefits, right? I feel like the future of this, the way it's going, and not necessarily, so cryptocurrency is one thing. We can debate all day long if cryptocurrency is a scam, or if it's not, or if it's going to work. It's been around for a while at this point. It's being used by countries around the world. The US is creating a digital currency. So, I mean, I'm pretty confident that we're going to see cryptocurrency in some aspect
Right.
throughout our life. But blockchain specifically, which I feel like is a less controversial topic, to me has so many potential applications, not just in the law, but for the average consumer, how our lives work, how voting can work in the future, because now everyone's worried about fraud. Great way to solve that would be using blockchain. And then we don't have these voting contests that last, counting weeks and weeks and weeks. It's pretty instantaneous.
Right.
So voting, healthcare, Web3 is great for protecting data, but also healthcare HIPAA violations, things like that. I think anyone that's read all the controversy about threads knows that there's healthcare information that's being given to them by signing up for threads and stuff like that. So if you want to protect information, you want to look into blockchain, right? And Web3. So to me, the benefits, the potentials, the future outweigh all of these negatives.
Right.
But I'm excited to see where we go from here and the future.
Nice. So
that's my little presentation.
No, this is great. It was a great overview, and kind of just to already start thinking about it, whether you're trying to do something personally or in your business. Let's talk a little bit about estate planning for the typical person.
Sure.
Who has accumulated assets, crypto or NFTs or any kind of other blockchain asset. What should a person know?
Oh, and I should have given this at the beginning. I forgot. I am an attorney, but I'm not your attorney. Anything I say is not a legal advice, is for educational entertainment purposes only. Always consult.
And no financial advice as well. This is not a financial advice.
There we go. We gotta give
all bases here.
all these disclaimers have to get out there. So estate planning. So I am not an estate planning attorney. However, in terms of business and asset protection, I would say a lot of people are utilizing business trusts in order to hold some of these cryptocurrencies and NFTs, especially for people trading real estate. The US, it might not be as popular, but places like Canada have been doing it for a while. And they use the trust. The business trust, owns the company. The company is the owner of the blockchain and puts it into the trust, right? And that way, if they want to sell the property in real life, all they have to do is remove it from the blockchain. It's still owned by the company. The company sells it normally, or if they can sell it online, they sell it through the blockchain. And essentially what happens is the person is purchasing the company and the business trust rather than just
the asset,
right? Yeah. The asset. So a lot of people are doing it on that side. I will say, if you have any types of cryptocurrency, you definitely want to have those passwords and everything, so posthumously someone can access them. Because again, if you lose that and you don't know, which wallet you have it on and what the codes are to get into it, it doesn't matter that you have $1 billion.
Yeah, put it in a safe.
Put it in a safe with instructions, for posthumous reasons. A lot of people I've heard of, so again, I'm not an estate planning attorney, but a lot of people that I heard of that are in estate planning are doing things on the trust side with that and putting them into trusts and separating them out, maybe even creating LLCs and putting those into a business trust. So there's a lot of different options. You definitely want to have talked about that in your business plan, because a lot of people have a lot of money on there. So imagine owning a lot of shares of stock. With shares of stock, it's usually easier because you get the share of stock, you can see who owned it, and then you have to go through the probate process in order to transfer that asset into whoever your beneficiaries are at the end of the day, or the state if you didn't have beneficiaries. But it's not as simple as putting like a POD, a pay on death, on a bank account, because this person needs to have access to your wallet. They need to have access to your passwords. They need to know where it is. And if it is owned by a business, who's basically the trustee of that. So that's why a lot of people are using trusts and business trusts to regulate it, because the trustee has a fiduciary duty to the beneficiaries. So they want to make sure that the people involved with helping you have that type of fiduciary duty. So that's like the most popular way I've been seeing it happen.
And that is probably like the cleaner way of doing it when you do pass away or unexpectedly and there's no doubt, right? Like where these things are, who has them, who's in control, who it belongs to, all this stuff.
All that stuff.
So what if you don't have a plan? What if you don't have any of this assets in a business or in a trust? What kind of danger are you looking
Danger,
at
Will
possibly? What kind
Robinson,
of problems
danger.
are you looking at down the line?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say the biggest thing you're looking at, if you don't have any kind of estate plan at all, you're looking at either a long probate process for people to go through, which is expensive. So, I mean, you're dead, so maybe you don't care. But, you know, if you do,
Yeah,
if you
but
do
if you care
care,
about people, your people,
you care
you might
about
want to
your
prepare.
people, your family.
Right.
You know, probate can be long, drawn out, expensive. If you haven't designated who is inheriting any of your stuff, you're going to have huge disputes, especially if someone finds out you have $100 million in Bitcoin or something like that. Imagine
yeah,
everyone that's going to come out of the woodwork to fight for that, right? The long lost cousin is going to be like, he promised it to me on his deathbed. And there's just, I mean, look at Aretha Franklin, who, I don't know if you've heard the controversy recently. I believe the court ruled that the will that they found in a couch is now the valid will of Aretha Franklin. I'm pretty sure that's what just got ruled. So,
oh my God, no, I didn't hear that.
Yeah. So this is, again, that's not my area of law, but I do keep up with these different interesting cases.
Yeah.
And so if you have a will, great. A will at least is a good start, saying, if I have any of these things, this is who it goes to, right? At the end of the day, if you don't have any of those things, those people aren't going to get anything anyway, but at least it helps the probate process. If you want to avoid the probate process, you do what's called a pour over will into a trust. So that's like an example of cleanly pouring it over into a trust. But if you own cryptocurrencies and you're not thinking about what happens later for, you know, your family, then if those passwords were on your phone, they're gone. If they don't have access to your phone, they're gone. If they don't have access to your codes, they're gone. So you want to put somewhere with a trustee or a lawyer, or, you know, even your own safe, that if someone has one password to the safe, they'll get to it. It also begs the question, how savvy are you with protecting your own technology? So if you don't have a good IT company, whether you're a business that's trading in Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, or an individual, if you don't have a good IT firewall protection, something like that, and someone gets access to your servers and your passwords are stored on your servers because you wanted to have your password somewhere, now someone has access to everything, can basically take your money and run, because again, it's pseudonymously transferred and it could be in Russia, and the government can't go to Russia and get the money.
The moral of the story is protect your passwords.
Protect them. Protect your
know
passwords.
Where they are, know where your what the wallet number is, and all that.
All of those things, especially if you have a substantial amount of money. Like if you just have something where someone gave you some free whatever, it's maybe not. But if you're like actively trading in it, yeah, you need to have a plan.
Right.
A good IT company, Stellar IT, they do all of our IT work for our firm and all of our clients. So if you don't have some kind of like, if you're trading heavily, like, so if you're in a business of it, you're trading in it, you're investing a lot, you definitely want to have an IT company come in, make sure you have firewalls in place, systems. You might have a cloud server, which is what we use for a lot of stuff. So there's different things and ways to protect yourself, but you definitely want to have that as part of your estate plan, as a good IT company.
Good. Well, that is just, I think, almost common sense, right? Just
well, yeah, but you know, a lot of people don't think about it. They're just like,
yeah, I know. But thank you so much, Lauren. This was great. I don't have any other questions. You know, I think we went through a ton of information, which is really awesome. Thank you. Hopefully we get more people like aware of these things and actually, you know, protecting themselves and knowing what they need to do, or seeking the advice they need. So if you are in need of connecting with Lauren, here you go. Here's the QR code. Scan it, takes you to Lauren's LinkedIn. This is her IG handle and also her website so that you can stay connected with Lauren. If you want to stay connected with me, just scan right here. And thank you so much, Lauren. Any last words would you like to say before we close?
I mean, I would just say that if you're interested, other than being a lawyer by day, I'm also involved with a nonprofit called Women for Success. We put on events, masterminds, conferences, and community for people to get more involved, especially women, to beat the odds against small businesses, to get more money. We have a big conference coming up, a Female Founders Forum in September.
When is that? When is
Yeah,
that?
September 20th to the 22nd. So really the meat and potatoes is on the 21st and 22nd. That's when we have all the speakers and panels. But it's going to be amazing. We have a women-owned, she-owned marketplace, sip and shop, happy hour planned. We're partnered with Capital One. So we're excited to be partnered with them. We have some great speakers and panels lined up. All your food is included, all your connections, all the learning.
Nice.
Yeah.
Where is the location?
At the Coral Gables Women's Club here in Miami.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. I'd love to be there.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So we're excited to have you. And if you're interested in getting more money for women, to get funding money, there will be funders there looking to invest in businesses. So definitely come out. It's going to be a great, eventful, fun, informative, but also you're connecting with other badasses. So gotta love that.
Yay. Thank you, Lauren. This was fantastic. I want to thank everyone that was here and watching, and see you all next time.
Woo-hoo.
All right, let me stop here.